Hi, we're here today in back of Pope's Tavern, standing in front of this original vintage 1929 Florence wagon that was donated to the city of Florence by Mr. Thurman Kelso several years ago. The Florence Wagon Factory was one of the businesses that really put Florence, Alabama on the map in the 1880s and early 1890s. The Florence Wagon Works came from Atlanta, Georgia at the height of the Florence industrial boom in February of 1889. At the time, it was one of about 50 factories that were in Florence or had just located to Florence. And it was founded in 1882 as the Atlanta Wagon Company by native New Yorker Dr. Alfred David Bellamy, who graduated from medical school in Chicago and then practiced medicine in a couple of states before he relocated to Georgia. He had to quit practicing medicine due to a hearing impairment, and so he founded the Atlanta Wagon Works in Atlanta in 1882. In 1889, due to the plentiful timber and the Tennessee River, it was easier and cheaper to ship wagons where they needed to be shipped from Florence than it was from Georgia. Bellamy relocated the plant to Florence in February of 1889. There were two big exposition buildings that were built, 2 stories. By June of 1889, the newspapers reported about 200 hands were being employed. Interestingly enough, by 1930, the workforce had shrunk down to about 30 workers at the wagon factory. It went on to become, according to anecdote, the second largest wagon manufacturer in North Alabama, second only to Studebaker. Studebaker was able to diversify. They started making automobiles. The wagon factory tried to make a line of lawn furniture or porch furniture and tables, but they never completely were able to make that work, so they sold out during World War. The company closed during World War II, and the remaining factory employees and what was left of the company relocated to Hickory, North Carolina. But so it had pretty much gone out of business by that time, and they sold all the remaining scrap metal and lumber at the wagon works for scrap. What got me interested in this about 25 years ago was the fact that I had a great-great-grandfather, Wiley F. Freeman, and at least 2 of his sons, Miles and Dan Freeman, who worked at the wagon factory in from 1880, roughly 1898 to the early 1900s. Dan moved to Texas around that time. Wiley was a wagon builder, so I don't know exactly which department of the wagon factory he worked in, but his census for 1900 recorded his occupation as wagon builder. And the wagon factory was, if you read about it from old newspaper accounts, which we have collected at the library, it was almost its own, a small village. They had a water tower moved from Handy's Hill in West Florence in the 1890s. They had their own fire brigade. They had a commissary. They had an Employees Improvement Association. They had a Sunday school founded by Dr. Bellamy. They had a library founded and stocked by Dr. Bellamy. They had a baseball team called the Wood Sawyers, a company newspaper called the Wagging Tongue, and the company, it was pretty massive. It issued its own script, and it had state-of-the-art equipment. It had indoor sprinkler systems, and they had 2 major fires at the wagon factory, so I'm sure that sprinkler system came in handy. In the 1890s, electric lights were installed. They had a rapid roller copying machine. I'm not exactly sure what that was, but that was the latest technology. They had an addressograph machine, which probably had something to do with addressing envelopes and stationery and correspondence. They had, as you'll see from some of the images, by the 1890s and early 1900s standards, it was state-of-the-art. They shipped wagons throughout the South and Southeast. They shipped them to several countries: Mexico, Russia, Hawaii. I mean, they shipped these wagons everywhere. They shipped them to France with the World War I Expeditionary Force to France. And you can still see models like this from the 1920s various places around the area. My friend Daryl Bradley used to own one that he bought from a lady in Athens. I think he had to sell it. So you see these wagons from the 1920s and 30s every so often. A man named Willard South, who has since passed away, used to build and restore Florence wagons. We had a Florence Wagon Club that I was a part of that was founded by Sid and Jane Ham. Jane had authored 2 books on the wagon factory, so Sid and Jane also had the t-shirts made. They gave me this t-shirt that I'm wearing here, which the caption says Florence Wagon Works 1889 to 1941. 1941, of course, is when the wagon factory officially closed down and the remnants of the factory were relocated to Hickory, North Carolina. So they had these t-shirts made, and I've still got mine. One thing that I wanted to mention also is that starting around 1905 or 6, the Florence Wagon Factory moved its official headquarters from Richard Street to downtown Florence to what is now 111 South Court Street in for what for many years was the old Lamar Furniture Building. Many locals will remember it as that. It's now the Florence Abstract Company building. It was built as the Florence Hotel, the Hotel Florence, 3-story brick building. That was the wagon factory's headquarters, and they also, their Florence Vehicle Company, subsidiary company, was also headquartered out of that location. I believe we have a photo of it. And that company sold buggies and carriages. So they would advertise alongside the Florence Wagon Works with their main line, and they sold wagons. They sold their motto was the light running Florence, based on how light and smooth running the Florence wagons were. They sold all kinds of wagons, 2-horse wagons, 1-horse wagons. They sold caissons. They sold delivery wagons. They sold every kind of wagon imaginable. The vehicle company sold buggies, which before people had automobiles, they would drive their buggies to go where they needed to go. So the Florence Vehicle Company only stayed at that location for a few years, and I think they moved their headquarters back out to Richard Street on the river. And one thing I find really interesting about the wagon factory is that they had very high-tech machinery, state-of-the-art for like 1900, and state-of-the-art equipment. The machinery they used to make the wagons was way more sophisticated than the wagons they were making. Even more kind of ironic is by the 1920s and 30s, Florence Wagon Company making wagons and furniture, but they were shipping the wagons by truck. So they were shipping the wagons to all points across the United States by truck. So you're making wooden wagons and you're shipping them by automobile, by truck. That's kind of interesting to me that the product they're making was way less sophisticated than the way they were shipping them at that point. Of course, they had a railroad spur and a steamboat landing, so they shipped them by rail and by river. But that's a brief history of the Florence Wagon Works, which the light running Florence, their motto, made Florence and the Florence wagons a household word.